Hello, ladies. How are we all?
Really great. Thank you.
Good.
Kia
Thank you
ora.
for
Yeah.
being here today. So, I'm Kimberly, for those who are listening who don't know who I am, Kimberly Sweeney from Degrees of Separation. And I'm one of the co founders of our Divorce and Separation Institute. And I'm here today with Kelly, who's also one of our co founders, and she's from SOS Divorce, Kelly Sutton. And we've got Sarah Catherall here with us today, who's written a book about how to break up well. So, we wanted to introduce her to all of you and show you her book and
It
ask
is.
her a few questions. Yeah. So welcome, Sarah, and thank you for joining us, and thank you for writing such a great book for us all. I think it doesn't matter where you are in that process. If you're thinking about it, if you're going through it, if you're coming out the other side of it, that book really resonated for me even 14 years after my divorce. I could see a lot of my own situation in there, but it was really light, it was informative, there was even a little bit of fun in there as well. So it's not all serious and doom and gloom. There was lots of great tips and just things that resonate for a person, I think, going through that process. And it's really nice to have a book that's written by a Kiwi journalist who's, a word master, but also, Sarah, you've been through your own divorce as well. So it's kind of off the back of that, isn't it? Your experiences of going through it yourself, and you just felt like, and you can speak to this yourself, but I feel like it was to help others. Would I be right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I've spent a lot of time telling other people's stories. I've been a journalist for something like, oh gosh, showing my age, about 30 years now. And often I'm interviewing people who have been through some sort of traumatic event and they have turned that into their own. They've written a book or they've created some sort of work to help others. And I couldn't have written this book 15 years ago
Mm.
when my marriage actually ended partly because I was too close to it, but also there was too much to go through. But now I could sort of look back and say, how can I help others by writing this story? And it actually felt a little bit cathartic as well to be able to put it all together. And I guess to sort of create a bit of a community because something like 1 in 4 children now are living with either a single parent
Mm.
or two parents in separate homes. And that's huge. But the narrative of the happy nuclear family is sort of still out there. So I think to make you feel like you're part of something as well, and that you're not to make people feel accepted, to feel understood. Yeah, that was part of the
And that you're
humanity.
not
Mm.
alone.
Yes.
You're not
I think
alone.
that's really key. One of my questions for you, Sarah, was and what you said, you're 15 years down the line, is that are you at the perfect time now to have written the book, or do you think you could have written it during your journey, sort of post separation? Is it because now you found yourself, you found this lovely new partner, and you're through that other side, your girls are growing up? Was that the perfect time for you to write it?
I think so. I mean, I did actually keep a lot of diaries and text messages and emails and things like that, which I was able to refer to when I was writing some of that early stuff. Because the problem with remembering that time is, you can tend to cling on to certain memories and forget others. So it is actually absolutely rooted in fact. But yeah, I think that one thing for me, and you'll appreciate this as mothers as well. I've now got three gorgeous daughters who are 24, 21, and 18. And my mantra was always to put their needs first. My ex and I had, we'd gone into our relationship with all the best intentions, but it hadn't worked out. I didn't want them to suffer. And so sometimes I look back and I think, oh, I might have been a little bit of a, not, I don't want to say doormat, but I almost would put my own needs right down the pack because I just wanted them to be okay. And now they're in healthy, happy relationships. They're strong, confident young women. And so I can sort of genuinely, honestly say the way that we co-parented them was the best approach. And I sort of want to share that. And I
Mm.
don't think so. I guess when they were younger, a few years out, it would have been, I still wasn't sure, how it was all going to work out. Whereas I can sort of look back on the whole journey and the process and say, I'm so pleased and I'm so relieved,
Mm. Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's a big part of it is how we show up and how we support our children helps them survive and thrive, but also helps us because we need to know that our kids are okay, and we're only okay if our kids are okay. And you're right, we as mums especially, we put ourselves at the bottom of the pecking order. It's about making sure that everything else is organized, aligned, and everyone else is doing all right before we do. But I don't know about you girls, but I do look at my 16-year-old and think, I've only got a couple more years and then she will be in the world. And so I want to put all my energy and effort into making sure that she is going to, do well in the world, and that our divorce hasn't affected her like it does affect some kids, and it is about how the parents show up and do their best as co-parents. And I think you, in your book, Sarah, really highlight what a wonderful job you guys did with your co-parenting from even in the early days. It's the trickiest part is those early days of finding what's going to work, but it from what I read in your book, you did a really great job of that. So well done. And that's
And
the
I
point
think
of the book, isn't it? To let others understand that there is a better way to do it. And
Definitely.
yeah.
And it was really important, Sarah, that you went through what worked for you. Because I had the same sort of thing. I did something quite different, but what worked for me and my ex-husband. And it was really interesting because my kids are now old enough that, they were quite angry in the early stages because we were such good friends and they couldn't work out if we got on so well, why weren't we together? And now that they're sort of 18, 21 and 22, they're going, thank you. Thank you so much. And it's, you're hearing back, that they've changed their view and everything. So do you hear a little bit of that, Sarah, or?
Yeah, I mean, we gather together for events, family events. Over summer, we went out on my ex's boat. We're all sort of having a birthday party on it. We literally, and I really like his new wife, and I think she is lovely. I mean, I'd be friends with her. I'd hang out, and I think we have got this big sort of community of people, kind of like the Maori village approach. I like that, and I think, as I say in my book, it takes a village to raise a child. And actually, Mia, who's 18, says, "Mum, I'm so glad that I've had all these adults who've had input into my life." And I think they've made them all interesting, great people. And I agree, Kelly, you having some sort of ongoing relationship with your ex, if you can, I mean, of course, if there's been abuse or trauma, that's not possible. And we've got to kind of say that this is our story. The way it's worked out for us is we've been lucky to be able to have good relationships. But ultimately, for me anyway, I personally think having some sort of continued bond with the father of your children is good, is healthy.
Absolutely. And it, it's different for everyone. And even we often talk about what does an amicable divorce look like, don't we, Kelly? And amicable doesn't mean we're all friends and on a boat every summer and having, a fabulous Christmas with our ex-husband and his new wife, because not all of us can do that. But amicable is being friendly, being able to communicate about your children's needs, and showing your children that they do, they are the priority for you both, hopefully, and not everyone can do that, but the closest you can get to that is going to set your children up for success as they
And
grow.
importantly, it doesn't happen overnight.
It takes a lot
of work involved. Yeah.
That's so true. Yeah.
You have those moments, don't you? The first time they repartner with someone, and that feeling that you feel as a person that they've chosen someone else. There's kind of landmarks, I think. Well, I look back on my experience and think of the times that were really confronting. And so it wasn't a smooth, it was definitely the early days were difficult, but then there were the bumps along the way as well.
And you manage that, from being able to communicate well, even with the bumps, right? Like I know in your book, and it resonated with me, there are a lot of bumps in those early years. It's not just days, it can be the early years if you've got quite young children that you're co-parenting, or numerous children that you're co-parenting. So there are going to be bumps, but it's how you show up and how you communicate with each other to resolve those bumps and do what's better for the family, isn't it? Yeah. So what
definitely.
other things did you, in your book, what other things did you write about that you thought would be to help others? Is there other specific things that come to mind for you that you thought I really need to share this?
Um, well, I just think the culture of romance and love and the times we're expected to settle down, we still have this expectation that people will be in a partnership. And I love the sort of stories like Chrissy O from Hunters and Collectors, who's just turned 70, and she's like, I'm happily single. And she says, I wouldn't mind a lover, but she's in midlife, and she said, at my age, a man's looking for a nurse or a purse, and she's got everything she wants. So I like those stories of empowering, not necessarily needing to fill that space with someone else. I enjoyed sharing those stories as well.
Yeah, they were great stories. And just seeing different people's perspectives, like we hear it, Kelly, don't we, in our coaching world, but not everyone's in our world of dealing
Yeah.
with people that are separating and going through this. And so for your book, you had some really good light stories, fun stories that, I felt like some of it was a bit Marian Keys, like I was so like in the story and in the book, I was like not only feeling it was my life, but interesting to hear about how other people's journeys have been for them as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I
Mm.
like how you mixed up,
great.
Sarah, that real rawness of the feelings that you go through with that real humor when you look back and go, actually, that was kind of funny if you look at it in a different light. And I think that's needed. I think in this area, it's really needed and really important that someone reading the book can see that you look back and you can laugh at situations that you think, oh, how on earth did I get here? But I think that's really important that you're pulling them forward to a future that's possible.
Yeah, yeah. I hope
Mm.
it's hopeful. And I think also, I know that the tone does feel like it's written more for women, but did you think it was? Did it feel that way to you? Or, I mean, I didn't intend
Mm.
it to be specifically for that audience, but deliberately got a chapter in there on what it's like for men. And that was partly, as I sort of said, being a journalist all these years, you've got to have a balanced story. But it was really interesting to hear from some of the mediators and things who say, men really struggle often
Mm.
because they're sort of thought of as incompetent fathers without women can be a bit domineering about the children and so on. And then they don't have, we can go off for our walks with our girlfriends, natter away on the phone with anyone, and we can sort of talk it out.
Mm.
And often that conversation is you're all over the place. You're like, oh my God, I love him. I want him back. Oh, I hate him. You're sort of in an absolute muddle. You have no idea what. But girlfriends are sort of, there, people can listen. But I don't think men have that same support network. And I think as a ex, I think about that, and I sit with my partner who's divorced, and he really had a tough time. And he
Mm.
said, he didn't really, it was really hard to
Mm.
reach out to people.
Yeah,
Do you
I think,
see that?
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Like women, as you say, we have our girlfriends, and we're kind of used to being more open and honest and just talking things out, and then we know we feel better from it, right? We don't
yeah,
look for anyone to fix our problems. We just want somebody to hear us and understand
yeah,
us. Whereas
yeah.
men put barriers up, and they kind of have that self-protection, don't they? They haven't been. I think,
Definitely.
yeah, I think boys are raised to just suck it up, aren't they, and just get on
Yeah,
with it, and that's how
Especially in
their
New Zealand.
mentality. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I
yeah.
had it interesting because I grew up with my dad when my
Mm.
mother left, and I really saw what he went through, and it was really tough to watch as a young teenager. And I find I do get a lot of men clients, and it's really interesting because they feel like they're like, I've never told anyone this.
Mm.
And you become that person that they can talk to because you're just so neutral and so non-judgmental. It's like, and I think it's really healthy.
Yeah.
They know they've got someone that they can open up to, and we've got an amazing new male coach on board in New
Mm.
Zealand, Simon, who's fantastic, and we did a webinar with him, and it was really interesting to hear his view. And I think
Mm.
that's really important, is that it's both men and women feel it differently, but they still feel those same raw emotions,
Yeah, they
just in
do.
different areas.
Mm,
Yes,
mm,
definitely, definitely.
mm,
The other thing I was going to say, you asked me whether I could have written it in the early days. I was actually very much, I made myself quite a victim. Like I was like, he's left me. And I think the sort of new thinking is, what did I do to contribute to this breakup? And I think that I can look back and think, well, we didn't have enough space for each other, a relationship, which is kind of what I wrote about in a chapter in the book about the need to support a relationship, looking for help, seeking help if you need it. But yeah, we didn't really have any space for each other, but also I was a bit of a nag. And I think the combination of the two of us together, our dynamic, we sort of brought out the worst in each other. And especially when we're under pressure, not so
mm,
much in the early days, but
mm,
and I love what Julia Lorimer says in my book, where she says, my first husband made me bored, my second husband made me angry, and my third husband makes me just feel the best version of myself. And that's it's like hanging out with a friend. There are certain characteristics that there's a great dynamic, or somebody pisses you off or whatever. And so recognizing, I think, as parents as well, and thinking about friends, choosing someone, I mean, obviously a bit of fun or whatever, but the long-term partner,
mm,
really thinking about, is this person going to support me through my life journey? Are
mm,
we a good fit?
mm,
Is he easy to be with,
mm,
she?
mm.
Yeah, so that was something I think is interesting to think
Yeah.
about.
It is,
Mm.
isn't it? Especially when, if you've gone through a separation and divorce and you're looking to repartner, you want to try and choose, well, the next time around, hopefully there's not three husbands later, but sometimes there
Yeah.
is, right? But it is recognizing as we get older who we are and what type of partner we need. Because when you're young, you don't really think about all those things. You just fall in love and think it's going to be happily ever after, don't you? But it's like, if I'm really sick, is he there for me? If I'm really sad, is he there for me? And vice versa, can I be there for him when he needs me? Because if there's something stopping that, then it is kind of like, well, where is this going? And when I get to my older years, are we going to be the best partners for each other, Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Something I found which I enjoyed, which I know because we know each other, Sarah, and we've been on tramps together and everything, is that I loved the chapter on dating. It was just
Yeah.
and I know we've had many chats about that sort of thing as well. But one of my things, and I found really interesting, because it's something that I found really hard to deal with too, is that you date and then sometimes you stay in it a bit too long because you're like, I don't know how to end it,
Yeah.
and you don't want to be mean, or it's just a really difficult time when you haven't dated. You've
mm,
dated in your very young days, and then all of a sudden you're thrown into this whole new era going, I don't know what to do.
mm-hmm.
So I thought that chapter was really great in saying, yep, this happened. Still
Yeah.
don't know how I really did it, but so I think that's really important. Do you have any, because I love your tips at the back, have you got any more tips about that when you're dating and then you're like, this isn't working?
How do I get out of this?
Yeah. How do I get out?
So long ago, but I don't know, I just think it's a really hard thing, isn't it, to end, because I can be quite nice and kind and not want to hurt someone, and because I was dumped, I found it very hard, and I wrote a little piece of a capsule about that, but I found it very hard to dump someone.
Yeah.
And it is hard. I mean, I think in a way, I've got girlfriends, doing the online dating at the moment, and they go for a date and they just like, oh no, I just cut the ties. I'd almost say cut the ties early,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's hard. And online dating, oh my goodness, honestly, has opened up some wonderful opportunities, and people have met in ways they never would. And I loved writing. I love sharing those wonderful stories. And in fact, I kind of met Steve slightly online, where he popped up as a Facebook friend about 8 years ago, and I was on a total man ban. I was like, no, no way. I've had enough. I'm sick of it. The last one was, just awful. Anyway, so and I reached out to him as a friend, and we sort of just had this real connection. We knew all these people in common, and he said, oh, it's a bit soon for me to meet up with you. And I sort of So 2 weeks later, after messaging all the time, he had been separated for 2 years, but he was still, he, felt like he was healing. And we met up and we've been together ever since. But there was this kind of familiarity and when we met, and it was just easy. Whereas I hadn't really had that before. And I kept, when I was in these relationships, because I don't actually mention a couple of the relationships I was in my book, out of fairness to the two guys I went out with. I went out with one for about a year and a half and one for about 2.5 years. But it was sort of like, I kept thinking, am I expecting too much? I'm just wanting a bit more. And I just kind of hung on. And they were lovely guys and they've both got new partners, but they weren't for me. And I agree, Kelly, it's really hard to sort of get yourself out. I just think
And it's also that
I don't know.
how long do I put into this? Like you've got to give it your time and energy to see where it's going to go. But then it's like, do you want to end up 2 years down the track and then figure out he's not the one for you? But it's kind of that short a period of time where you're like, you got to hang in there enough to see if you are aligned at all, or if there's any chance, without kind of going after one coffee, no, you're not for me, but then there's that whole, I don't want to put 2 years into this and then find out that he's not for me. So it's a really hard balancing act, isn't it, to kind of put your energy into a new relationship to see where it's going to go, but not feeling like it's wasted energy at the same time.
And I think when your self-esteem's quite low, like mine was, I was just happy to have any attention. And I look back and I'm really sort of, I guess that's another little message I'd love to get out there to people reading my book, that I look back at that time and I think the most nourishing things I did were the girls' tramping trips, the hot yoga on a Tuesday night, the walks with girlfriends, the reading books, hanging out with my children, dancing in the living room, whatever. It wasn't the sort of these relationships that dragged on, and then I sort of just to fill some space. And I sort of regret, if I could have that time back, I would have filled it quite differently.
Yeah. And that's a big lesson in life, isn't it, really? Even when you're in a committed relationship with somebody you love, you need that balance. You still need that girlfriend time and that quality time with your children and people outside of the relationship. So it's just remembering to carry that on through life, isn't it?
And I think that's when you were talking, Sarah, about when we went into our marriages, and especially you were a bit like me as well. There were businesses involved, people were working really hard, and then babies, boom, 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 boom. You kind of forgot about that. You couldn't find that time and forgot about that time. So the next time the kids are a bit older and you can find that time and you can nourish yourself as well as nourish the relationship. So, and I think that's a really important thing to remind people if they're moving into another relationship, try and find that time to nourish that.
That's true. I mean, that's usually why you got into the predicament you're in, and you're going through a separation, because we get so lost in bringing up families and working and juggling everything. We get lost in that, don't we? And the relationship gets forgotten. But it's remembering to put some energy and some time into those more intimate relationships as well, to make it work.
Yeah I know. Yeah, exactly. And just as you say, just enjoying time on your own, and then when you are in a new relationship, making sure that you have space for your children if you have them. I think blending's quite difficult. I was lucky. I didn't have to blend, but you probably come across couples that are blending, and I think that's challenging. And I see it with girlfriends where the kids often the parents have different parenting styles. It's like, how much do I intervene in your kids, etc., etc. But then equally, one of my very good friends, she's got step brothers and sisters and half brothers and sisters, and there's just this big happy, they love it. So
it all comes down to personalities, doesn't it? Like whether they're all going to get on or not, and what ages they all are as well. But there's so many different types of blended families these days, including, I've got friends that have gotten together, and she had 2 children through IVF on her own. And so she's ended up marrying a guy who's taken, he's got older children that he's already brought up, but he's taken on her and her children, and he's willing to step in as that father figure. And so it's another different example of a blended family, but there's so many different examples these days of what blended families look like, isn't there?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think as long as people know that it is work, it's not all going to be happy families, it is work.
Brady
But if
Bunch.
you're willing to put in the work, it can be really amazing. And as the kids grow up, it becomes less work and less understanding. They kind of just go, oh, well, this is the norm. This is okay. And as you said, that whole greater whānau, Sarah, like, that whole it takes a village. And if people, like, I'm always of the view, if people want to love my children, then that's fantastic. I want to uplift them and create that being a happy place as well. So I think that blended families, there's a lot of conflict only because of the different parenting styles and emotions in the background. But if you can sort of focus on all of those children together and how is that going to work? Because it's not only the parenting styles, it's how the kids get along.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
The other thing I was going to say, I know the chapter is, upside down, how to break up well, but I got a section in there, and I know you've had a webinar on this about, should I stay or should I go? And I do want to say that, honestly, I love seeing happy couples. I love it. I'm a romantic. I am not advocating breaking up at all. I think it's when you've done the work, you just can't stay anymore. You've had the counselling, whatever. But I think, there is that often that is the grass might look greener, but actually is it? That person might be exciting that you've fallen in love with, but is he going to end up being annoying like your partner down the track, and you're going to have all these complications, lose these particular relationships, be ghosted by friends who are upset with you, whatever. It's really, sometimes it just isn't, it's not going to be an amazing relationship, but it's going to be good enough. And for you can get your excitement in other aspects of your life. Do you know what I mean?
So true. And we get that too, don't we, Kelly? As divorce coaches, I think we're advocating divorce, but we've been through it and we understood there's a better way to handle yourself and handle the process. And that is our role, is to help you get a better outcome if you're going to go through it. And like you, Sarah, I became very passionate about helping people make it work, like, have you explored all the options? So then I've gone on to do lots of other training in regards to Gottman therapy and become a bit of a relationship coach as well, because I have hope that sometimes I can save a marriage, because they are just coming straight to you going, I just want to leave, I've had enough. But it's like, well, have you explored all the options? Have you even talked to your partner? Have you had some couples therapy? Like, the grass isn't always greener. What can we do to see what's possible here before we jump ship? And I think that's a really important part of any relationship, is to really be able to know you put all you could into it to see what was possible before you end.
And it is actually really nice to have couples that stay together. When you're coaching them, it's like
so lovely. It's like you just want to,
it is so wonderful.
Shout it from the rooftops. It's because it is just so nice when they come back to you and say, this is where we're at, we're making it work, we're having counselling, we're better than ever. I had one couple, their kids had left home, and they did that whole, nearly at retirement and going their separate ways, and he was a bit blindsided by it all, but in hindsight he was, I should have seen all the signs, but we ended up, him and I scripted some conversations for him to have with her, to get her to just talk to him, because she just packed and left, and so eventually they went to the beach and they sat and had a coffee and they just looked out at the view and just talked. And he was like, help me understand, like, I don't want to change your mind if you've made your mind up, but I need some closure and I need some understanding of how we got to this point after 30 years together and 3 children, and it just gave her that opportunity to feel heard finally. He hadn't ever sat down with her and talked to her like that, and it just opened up this whole new world for them both, and they started talking and engaging and regularly meeting up, and then ended up in couples therapy, and they're back together now and planning for their retirement and to do all the things and more that they were going to do, and I just think, so it's just all about just opening up some dialogue and conversation and feeling heard.
And I think
Yeah.
definitely looking at those times in life which are quite stressful, in
Mm,
our 30s. I mean, I don't know about you, but we were doing so much. We had young children, renovating a house. Ex had a
mm,
business. I was trying to keep my career going. We were sort of world building, and it was too much pressure.
yeah.
And I'm not surprised that we cracked, and probably if we'd hung in there, we would have got through it and kind of
Yeah.
risen up and come through. But we didn't. So it's recognizing those pressures that
Mm,
you're under, and
mm,
so with the kind of culture of hyper parenting, where we have to be sort of all things to our kids and
mm,
running them around to a million sports games after school, and money's financial issues,
yeah.
money's tight, cost of living, all these are pressures. So thinking about
Mm.
that too.
They all take their toll, don't they?
Mm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
liked
Yeah.
in your you always interweave your beautiful upbringing, and that Catholic upbringing is always really interesting too. So I wonder, because I get a lot of people that are very strong Christian based and they're really in conflict about divorce and separation. So we do a lot of work in that area, and a lot of work where they're not getting the support that they might get otherwise. Do you think that affected you in terms of your view of marriage and trying as much as you can to try and stay together because it wasn't part of your upbringing, especially in how our age where we grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had 7 aunties and uncles on one side and huge broods of cousins everywhere. And there was no divorce. And everyone, I mean, it wasn't like my aunties and uncles were all loved up, but they were together, and I never knew that as an idea. So I literally married for life. I think I knew one divorced couple when I was growing up. It just wasn't the thing. And
Mm,
so for me, it was actually very cultural. Um, Marriage. And so when it ended, I was completely blindsided. I was supported by my family, but I still, had that background. And I actually even think like Christmases. I remember that first Christmas. And in fact, I just wrote about it for one little thing I've writing. That first Christmas, my Christmas was always huge, lots of kids, lots of adults, terrible food. I mean, everyone bought a plate. It was sometimes like coleslaw and ham from a packet and chocolate biscuits, whatever. Didn't matter. But there was love and laughter and people. And then when I married, of course, we often alternated with our families, but his family was big as well. So that first Christmas of having just your children in the morning,
mm,
and then they go, and me sort of trying to I just remember watching the clock and thinking, I just want it to be midnight. I want this day that I associate with,
family
lots of
and
family and laughter
mm,
and joy to be
mm,
gone over.
yeah, you're right.
So that's actually thinking about those really significant occasions.
Mm,
Is
mm.
it's really is hard.
Well, and that's what keeps, many of us in a relationship longer than potentially we should be, because we have this idealistic view of what we want for our children and what we want for ourselves with that big family unit. But
Mm,
it's if it's not happy, it's not happy, is it? And
mm,
then there's the flip side, that you do end up having a lonely Christmas day. Like every second year my daughter would go to her dad because I would leave town when it would be my year with her and go to my family. So we had this agreement. But then every other year I'm on my own going, what do I do now? And I'd have everybody would invite me to
mm.
Christmas Day and I would go. But one Christmas I think I had 3 houses in one day, and I was exhausted by the end of it. And I thought, why am I actually am okay to do this on my own, but you just feel like it should be about family and being around people and being around friends. And so it does, become quite challenging when you have to have some of the day or all of the day without your children.
Yeah, and I don't
Mm,
think we can overlook. I don't really write about this in the book, but I don't think we can overlook what it's like,
mm,
when it's holidays and they go away, or even now my kids have left home. And so we share that time when they have the university holidays, and that's short, when
mm,
you only, so that is a loss. That's a
yeah,
loss that stays with me, that
yeah,
I don't get them home for the whole 6 weeks.
yeah, yeah.
That's something I will always feel. And
Struggle with,
um,
yeah. I feel like I had to kind of rationalize it for me to make myself like survive this process, right? Of only having your child half the time or what have you. And so I likened it to empty nesters. I'm like, when she does leave home, I'm going to be more prepared for it, because it must be terrible to just have them like for 18 years or plus, 100% of the time, and then they fly the coop and you've lost, all your children one by one. That would
It
be
is.
pretty devastating, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
And
It
so
is.
I keep reminding myself that at least I've had all these years of getting used to 50-50 parenting, and her having holidays with her dad sometimes and sometimes with me. And by the time she does leave home, I feel like maybe I'll cope with it better. But it is hard for all parents when we have to share our children, or even when they partner, right? Like they get married and then they have to go and share their Christmas days with the other side of their family. So it's a natural evolution of life, isn't it? But it happens to divorcees a lot sooner than what we
definitely.
want.
And
Yeah.
I do actually write a bit about the hopeful stories, the people that fill that space with great new things. And I love the story of Sarah Bronte, who went back to DJing, and she goes to music festivals, and another woman, Amelia, who started taking her sons to, going off to rock concerts with her children. And there's sort of like finding this old new me or old me or whatever it is evolved. And so, yeah, it is great if you can. Like, I remember Rachel Archer in their book, and she was wonderful, and she said, if you miss your children, don't, like, just enjoy them. Think of the people that would love to have that time out, sort of trying to almost flip it around.
Yeah.
Anyway, having just told you I do miss my kids.
I know, but it's the way we kind of try and rationalize it, right? And I have that with girlfriends that, are happily-ish married with children, and they say to me, oh, I wish I could have every second weekend without my kids, But it takes a long time to embrace that as a single parent, because it's obviously not what you want. But as you say, if you put some things in place and make that your time, when you're a solo parent and you're doing it all, it's really hard when you've got the kids to put any effort or time into yourself. But on those days that you don't have them, you do need to prioritize your needs and go out there and do things that bring you some joy and happiness outside of the home and child rearing. Hey,
yeah, definitely. I was also just going to say something about the shared parenting, and I don't know if you've heard, but there's quite a bit of research happening overseas, which is moving a bit away from the 50-50 model, the week on, week off, and actually saying sometimes it's actually better for the kids of thinking of a child-centered, like, what's best for these children. If they've had mum at home, and dad's working till 9 o'clock every night, and they only see him at the weekends, suddenly flipping it to a week on, week off, or 50% care can be actually quite harmful for everyone. And so in my situation, I know, Kelly, you were the same. I was the primary house, I had the primary home, and that was kind of circumstantial as well, because my ex had to move to Auckland for work. But I think that gave the girls the space, and I think if that's what everyone wants, to do 2 days, 3 days, 2 days, whatever, or the 50-50, that's great. But kind of not following some ideological model because you think you should follow this particular pattern of parenting. Is my view is that, do what's best for everyone in that situation.
I wanted to talk to you about that too, because you did nesting, which is becoming a lot more common now. And I think it's really important that people see that is, if it can be an option. So if you can talk through a little bit what happened with you and your ex-husband and how that came about and how it worked for you, because I think that's really important for people to hear.
Okay, so as I said, he had to move for work, and initially in Wellington he had his own place, but then he moved. And so initially he would come down and we'd pack up the girls. He'd come down one night a week and see them, which was great. And then every second or third weekend they'd go up and stay with him, and it was costed a fortune flying everyone around the country. But anyway, whatever. When he came down, the girls would pack up and go to the hotel. Now, you know what it's like when children leave the house. Someone would leave a shoe behind. I'd be dropping a laptop at school the next day. Someone forgot the lunchbox, whatever. So in the end, I suggested that the kids should stay in the house, and it was our family home. And so he would come down and stay in the house with his overnight bag and piles of food because he's a great cook and I'm not a great cook. I would go into the hotel that he was paying for and I'd have a lovely night in the hotel. Or, occasionally it would be an Airbnb or I'd go and stay with a girlfriend, but it was me that did the moving. And the girls were so great with it. They loved it. And they had this stability, and it really worked for us. And I do know that people are doing that, and often it's for financial reasons. I mean, setting up two houses, my God, is a lot of, it costs a lot. So you might not, might only need one 4-bedroom house and one apartment or one something else. And I think I think it works. I mean, some people are experts are kind of a bit divided on whether it's good, but this mediator in Auckland, Nurit Zebri, I don't know if you've come across her. She's a big fan, and she says, anything, it's the parents basically that have come to this decision. Why should the kids do all the hard work?
Yeah, if we can make it easier on them. And there's got to be some boundaries and some rules in place with what that looks like, but if you can be adults about it and respect each other's needs and boundaries around moving in and out of apartments and the family home, then I think it's a great idea in those early phases just to allow the kids that adjustment period at least. Yeah.
I also know another couple who broke up and then they got back together and they actually they haven't got back together, sorry, but they decided to buy one big house because they decided that the cost of having two separate houses was too much and the kids are teenagers. So they've both got sort of a wing.
Nice.
And,
I love
and
that.
they're good friends, but they're not together.
Yeah.
They still do week on, week off. I find it quite interesting. There's all these interesting models.
Yeah.
So basically, the week that Michelle has the kids, she's in the kitchen making dinner, running them around to basketball, etc. And he's off doing whatever. I think he goes away a bit for work as well. But they've just got this, so
it works, right?
Different folks.
Yeah. And
well, that was
nesting,
like me. I had an open door policy, just come and go because you're going to see them and they're there. And then, I could go off and do whatever. It was my time to have a break, go off and do everything. It wasn't staying overnight, but it was, I'm around this weekend, and, whatever works kind of thing. And we really work together in terms of, especially like, with Sarah with 3 kids, you're all over the place. I mean, you're in a car all weekend. You don't get out of a car, basically. You're just running around doing everything. So, the weekends that he happened to be in Wellington to be like, oh my God, here's the schedule. What can you do kind of thing? And it worked really well for all of us to do it that way. Yeah.
And I do love that open door policy, like you say, Kelly, especially for teenagers. They don't really like to be scheduled and they don't really like to be told what to do. But you've got more chance of them living between 2 homes because often they will choose one home over the other just out of convenience for their own laziness. But if you have that open door policy where they can choose to come and go at either parents, as long as that you know where they are and who they're going to be with, that's what teenagers like. They just like to be that bit more fluid with it all, don't they?
They sure do. They sure do. I don't know if it works forever, the nesting. You don't want to find that he's turning up with his girlfriend,
your partner or what have you, and that's the boundaries and the rules. Exactly. But in those early days, I think especially as you say now, Kelly, financially it's very hard for people to sell the family home. They're not going to get what they want, so they want to hold on to it. It's their future, isn't it, that they're going to be selling eventually and halving, so they want to get the maximum they can for it, and the nesting allows them to just hold on to it for that little bit longer till the market.
It allows the kids to get used to one parent at a time, and also sometimes there usually is one parent that isn't that main caregiver, and all of a sudden they become a main caregiver for half the time, and they're not really sure. They have to do a lot of learning in that time. So having that nesting allows them to learn in an environment where the kids know everything is as well and know what their schedule is. So it kind of is really good for the whole family to learn this is how it's going to work, and it'll be the same, but we'll eventually end up being in a family in 2 homes. So I think it can be really, really positive, but it's only going to work where there's boundaries and people that agree that this works for them.
That's so true. So Sarah, what is the What is the biggest thing you've learned from writing your book about love and breakups and all that comes with it? What is your biggest learning from your book?
Just really that love and relationships do require lots of work.
Yeah,
And
this is
it's a bit like a garden or a car, they require maintenance. And I think it's just to recognize that again, that person is not going to be that tick all the boxes, reduce our expectations of love. And yeah, just really, I guess that this can be a new chapter for so many people, but also a difficult one. I've got a story in there about this woman who was abused, and her husband's in prison, her ex. So hearing that how tough it can be for some people, those were some of the big learnings for me. Yeah.
And put things in perspective, kind of, and it must have
Put
been quite fascinating
yeah,
researching everyone's different stories and comparing
I
them.
know. And actually, a friend whose relationship ended a few years ago, she just said to me, I've just read your book, and she said, thank you for writing it, because she said it really confirmed for her that leaving her partner was the right decision. She related to one of the women's stories in the book. So, I mean, that's my hope. I don't have any business to push. I'm not a family lawyer or a coach or a psychotherapist specializing in whatever. I'm just a journalist with a sort of part of my, human interest stories and some tips. But apart from hoping to sell a few copies, which I have already, which I'm pleased to say,
Well done.
this is very much, kind of, as I said, a bit of a social purpose to put it out there.
Well, I think when you've gone through something like that, you've learnt your own mistakes, and you want to help people avoid those and do better, right? And just, as you say, like helping people understand that, we all have different versions of what our separation and divorce looks like, but ultimately we all go through similar things. And so knowing that you're not alone in what you're going through, and that maybe there's people worse off out there as well, so it's just kind of holding that space for people to just feel like they're not alone.
Yeah, and I think you did really well in the book by even stating the people that you went to get support, and the different options out there of, what type of support you particularly need at certain times. You're really open about that, so you normalized it, because a lot of people are still fearful of going in. Like, I remember me, I talk to no one. I'm just a shut down, don't really say anything, didn't want to have the emotions. But I think it's really important, even if you are that type of person, that there's people out there that you can just talk to and get it out. And when you hear yourself talking about it, it helps you move forward. And so I'm really grateful you did that in your book, because I think it's really important for people that do find it really hard to talk to people. And that's men as well. Even men just reading the lovely Divorce Cowboys sort of section, who's fantastic. But I mean, he's an amazing podcast for men as well. But it's like, you know what? It's good for you to get it out and speak to someone. Doesn't have to be close to you, but there's other people out there. There's other people there as experts to help you in that area. So I thank you for being vulnerable, Sarah.
Yeah, I'm always, that's fine. I mean, I've got a section in there talking about how I went to my lovely GP and went on antidepressants because I literally couldn't function. And I'm not ashamed to say that, because I just literally had to be a mother. I was an editor. I was so busy, and that's fine. Do what you need to do. Get through it.
Yeah.
But also, you were asking me about what I noticed too is probably my own personal growth as well.
See how far
I was going to ask, what do you feel like that made you the most empowered, sort of, as you were moving through it? Even something little that happened to you and you went, oh, I can do this on my own.
Yeah. Well, there was the thing I wrote about, which was, I will never forget, running the New York Marathon. That was 2 years after, and we did it for a charity with a group of friends. But it was all sort of, we had to raise money, and it was so tough doing the training, and I felt so liberated, and it was like it felt a bit like the metaphor for the marriage breakup, because as I sort of ran across the line, I thought, God, I've got this far. I can do this. This is 2 years ago. That was a big moment. And what else? I mean, there was sort of other little ones along the way. Even there's something as simple as setting up the home fibre, or the those, yeah, or mowing the lawn. I know, silly, but yeah, you are taking on all these household kind of
Mm,
jobs, eh?
Mine
But
was
that's
like
true.
changing a tire.
oh God, I
The
didn't do that.
car got a flat.
I got AA in.
Yeah, I would have just got the
Okay.
A in.
And I didn't have AA, and I went, okay, I'm getting AA. But it was like, something like that, and going, I did it. It's all right. I
Yep.
cleaned the gutters. I can do
Yeah,
that as well.
we can do
Yeah.
Yeah.
it. We can do it. And it's what we teach our children, right? Like I know I've in the 14 years that I've been separated and divorced, I've painted my entire house inside and out on my own, and
We
done
can.
lots of we can do anything. And if we show our
We can
children
do
that, then they
anything.
realize that they can also do these things. So yeah.
Exactly. And also when we're mothers and we've got daughters, we're great role models
Mm,
to show them,
absolutely.
show
Yeah,
them that. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No,
Well,
so,
thank you, Sarah. Is there anything else you want to share about your book before we wrap up?
no, I hope it's helpful.
Mm,
And yeah, like I said, a friend, a woman I work with, she emailed and said that she's bought it for her friend whose marriage has just broken up. She was going to take her a pot plant, but she took her my book.
mm.
So that's
Perfect
lovely.
gift.
And I guess yeah, and just I hope that whoever's watching this, it's awful and hard,
Mm,
and you will have a mix of emotions during those early days, but it's you'll get through it, and I hope at some point you will thrive and you won't look back on this time as a failure, or your marriage breakup as a relationship breakup as a failure.
mm,
It's just one chapter in our life. We're living longer, so
mm.
it's
Yep,
chance
right.
rebirth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think what I would like to say to the book is that, it's not about if you're thinking about leaving, it's a book that you can read at any point, even post divorce, when everything's done, because you've still got a lot of healing to do, and a lot of things that you're probably trying to justify in your own mind. Did I do that right? There's always self-doubt, right? Did I do it wrong? Did I get it wrong? Did I do it right? And I feel like the book just helps to reconfirm that, whatever your story is, that it was, you were put there for a reason, and you dealt with it the way you did for a reason, and the book's there to just kind of reconfirm some of
Yeah.
those self-doubts, hey.
And
And
reconfirm that we're just human and we
Mhm,
make mistakes. And
mhm,
if you're learning from them, and the kids are looking to you, and you're open and say, look, I made a mistake there. Oh,
yeah,
sorry, need to apologize for that. That's them learning as well.
yeah,
So we're all
yeah,
human.
yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And I certainly don't want to paint myself as perfect, or that I was, I did it perfectly, because I certainly didn't.
Mm,
And we
mm.
do make our mistakes along the way. And I introduced the girls to far too many kind of men. I wish I hadn't, not far too many, but there were a couple, that kind of
Yep.
stayed over, and in the early days. And I sort of think, oh God, no, it was a
I
bad
remember
idea. It was a bit
one.
soon. It was a
It's
bit soon.
true. And they, like, especially when they're little, because they don't have any filters. I remember I was dating one guy who's probably the third guy over about 6 or 7 years that I ended up dating him for a couple of years. So my daughter got quite comfortable with him, and one day she goes, remember that guy? And what about that one? Whatever happened to him? And I was like,
Yeah. I know.
he thought it was funny.
Mine had names to them. I remember the engineer or the pilot or the I go, oh, no. And then I'm like, what was his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
My
know.
daughter even threw in a few that I didn't date, and we argued about that. I was like, I never dated him.
Yeah.
He was just a friend, and she was
I
like,
know.
sure.
I do remember my son used to,
Yeah.
like any man that walked in the door, he would just like interrogate. And I'd
Mm.
be like, no, there's nothing there. It's
Stand
just
down.
no, I want to know.
It was quite funny, because when I started seeing Steve, we kind of kept him away from the kids for about 6 months. He was really respectful. He's like, no, let's not rush. And then he met them, and they just loved him. And then one night I had to go out for a work thing, and he came over and he said he'd cooked them dinner. And my middle daughter, who's like the feisty one, she sort of sat him down and started interrogating him with all these questions to find out how well he knew me and everything. It was so cute. Yeah. And then a couple of months later, he had been between houses and he was about to buy one. And I said, just move in with us. And I actually asked the girls permission. We were walking on the beach and I said, hey girls, I'd like Steve to move in with us. What do you think? And they all said, great idea. Love him. So it was, yeah. So that was something that was important for me. Important for me to do. Yeah.
And what a lovely end to, like, it's a beautiful ending to a new beginning, right? Like kids are on board, they love him. It just was organic and easy.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like any relationship. You have your moments of finding them annoying in some way, and I know we joke about that raccoon and the architect stacking the dishwasher. Have you heard that one? I'm the raccoon where I just chuck it all in, and he's like the architect. He's very organized and sort of structured, and I'm just a bit more
chaos.
So yeah, right. Yeah.
That's how it works.
That's life, living with people.
Exactly. Hey, well, thank you for sharing your story and your journey with everybody in your book and with us today. And what I'll do is I'll pop a link under this recording on the website for anyone that wishes to purchase Sarah's book. That will be there for you. And as Sarah says, it's actually an amazing gift. And it's a nice light read. It's not heavy. It's light. It's easy. You actually just don't want to put it down. I think I read it in a weekend.
Yeah,
It's
I
so
read it
good.
in 2 nights.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to say when you're doing your launches in case anyone wants to come along?
Well, the launch is actually this Wednesday at Unity Books, but that's probably too soon, is it?
Yeah, probably.
And then I've got one in Auckland at Time Out Bookshops on September the 18th. So there'll be something on probably their Facebook or website. And I was going to say, I've got a website, so I'm really interested if anyone buys the book and they've got any feedback. I'd love to hear from, I know I've heard from a few readers like you both, but yeah, I'd love to hear back from anyone and
book reviews.
I mean, exactly. Okay. And I really
well, you
appreciate
do realize you're now going to be part of a book club. Someone's probably going to be, your book will be book club.
Someone actually said that. I'm on that one of those surviving separation Facebook groups. And I sent a little link and someone said, I'm going to make this my next book club read. Oh, shoot. Okay.
Yeah. Make sure they're all not happily married.
I know, exactly. I mean, I guess we all know somebody, it might be even a friend's going through it. And you just want to understand what it's like for them.
Well, and that's the thing, isn't it? Like, there are people that, would feel like they never need to read it because they're happily married and will, hopefully never divorce. But it's actually still a really good book to understand what other people go through when they are going through this. As parents, and as if it's your daughter or your son going through it, it's a pretty good way to understand what they're truly going through if you haven't been through it yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. And also just even to recognize what, how to make a relationship work, that kind of things like that. I mean, the title's a bit misleading with some of in terms of it's not just picking up, but I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, well done. Well, I really enjoyed it.
Seeing you at the launch in Auckland, Kimberly, and you at the launch in Wellington, Kelly.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been amazing.
Because I think there's going to be a few people there.
I love it. Well, thank you for joining us today. Pleasure. And thank you for writing such a relevant book for us anyway and our clients. So we're happy to share it.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay.